Mom noticed strange stains on her daughter's dress and punished her. When she realized what it was, she was speechless. Catherine's mother, Lyubov Sergeyevna, liked to repeat that divorce was a small death for a woman. Later, Catherine thought her mother used such a pretentious phrase to cover up her dependence on her father, who did not even respect her, not to mention love in their marriage. The relationship between Lyubov and Gennady resembled some strange union between a servant and a high-ranking gentleman who, instead of sitting on the throne, preferred to lie on the sofa and watch TV while his servant, Lyubov, was running around the house with a rag or serving spoon in her hands. Catherine saw enough of that marriage model in her life. She knew perfectly well her father was wiping his feet on her mother, commanding her and never even pitying her. Even as a child, Catherine decided that would not happen in her family, but as her mother said, there is no fence against ill fortune. However, her mother was sometimes wrong. When Catherine received the divorce papers, she did not think it was time to order a pine box and a velvet pillow. She did not die after the breakup, but, on the contrary, seemed to resurrect. She breathed a sigh of relief, having thrown off a heavy burden weighing 80 kilograms, to be more precise. And the name of that burden dragging her to the bottom was Semyon. Catherine and Semyon met as most modern people do, online. However, they didn't find each other on a dating site, but on a forum. Their common interests and love for post-crossing brought them together. Catherine loved to search for friends from all over the world on the internet and give them postcards, which she drew and designed herself. At that time, Catherine dreamed of becoming a designer, founding her brand of paper and materials for scrapbooking, and drawing collections of postcards and covers for planners, notebooks, or even books. Letters from other people inspired the girl, but she could not imagine she would find her first love through correspondence. Later, Semyon admitted he registered on the forum because his sister asked him to, and he was not interested in the postcards. However, he liked Catherine so much that he exchanged addresses with her. After one letter came a second, followed by a third. Their letters were more and more passionate. The young people fell in love with each other. Their romance developed rapidly despite the distance between them. After 3.5 months, Catherine moved to another city and they began to live together. A year later, they got married, to the joy of her mother. And then Catherine found out that she was expecting a baby. She was only 18 years old then. However, first love, so bright and fast-burning, ends well only in fairy tales. In life, their feelings couldn't stand the test. At first, it all went fine, but when the child was born, Semyon seemed to have changed. He was often absent from home, showed no interest in his daughter, and did not try to help his wife with their child. "Babysitting is not a man's job, but a woman's," he said when Catherine asked him to help bathe the baby. "You don't work. You are responsible for our child and everyday life, and I'm making money." Semyon worked at a construction site and earned pennies. Catherine bit her tongue so as not to remind him of that. Semyon was also childishly offended if Catherine, tired of a sleepless night with the child, did not give him the proper female attention. "Are you jealous of our daughter?" Catherine resented. "You are my young wife," Semyon retorted. "You must please your husband whenever he wants, love him and so on. Shouldn't you at least greet me and put a hot dinner on the table when I appear on the doorstep after work? By the way, I'm working hard to feed you both. I want you to live in abundance." Catherine was shocked by such attacks. She vividly recalled her father, who demanded food from her mother and even frowned if he didn't like something. He couldn't even get up to get salt or bread. He kept asking her mother, who was also tired, to serve him. And the phrase, "you must please," completely cut into her ears with a sharp blade, making the girl wince and get angry. "Well, forgive me, my king," the young wife answered without trying to hide her sarcasm and bowing to the floor. "Next time, I'll have the red carpet laid out when you come home from the construction site. I'll serve you any food you like. Do you want red or black caviar?" Seeing his wife mocking him, Semyon became even more angry and behaved like a child. Catherine thought she had gone too far and was the first to seek reconciliation. She explained she was not sitting idle, but looking after their baby. "Our Annie has colic," she said. "The girl cries a lot and sleeps little. The doctor said it will pass soon, but I don't sleep at all. That's why I'm nervous." Her husband chuckled, sat at the computer, put on headphones, and started playing online games. Catherine didn't even know what offended her most, his indifference and unwillingness to listen to her, or stupid, naive behavior. Semyon did not want to grow up or become a father. Be patient, her mother ordered when Catherine called her and complained about her life. That's the fate of women. You don't want to remain a single mother, do you? What will you do then? You cannot count on me and your father. We won't support you and your child with our pension, and our health is not enough for babysitting. Catherine rolled her eyes, mentally answering her mother she would never return to her house. Time passed, and the baby grew, but the relationship between Catherine and Semyon only became worse. Catherine paid more and more attention to her daughter, trying to give her a wonderful childhood and be her mom and dad at the same time. Semyon often left home, saying he was meeting with his friends. He could return in the morning, completely drunk, and began to teach Catherine how to respect her husband. He even woke up his wife and daughter a few times and made a scandal. However, the last straw in Catherine's patience was when her husband took a mistress. She found it out by chance after seeing his correspondence with another girl. He was telling his mistress how good she was in bed and complaining about his married life. Like, he didn't like his wife, who wasn't hot enough, and his daughter made him nervous. At that time, Annie was 3 years old. Of course, Catherine immediately filed for divorce. Semyon was crawling on his knees, begging her to forgive him, and shouting it was a mistake. Judging by your correspondence with this Diana, your mistake lasted for quite a long time, Catherine retorted dryly. Didn't you tell her the main mistake of your youth was marrying me because I was pregnant? That was how you described our marriage to this girl, right? Catherine dear, forgive me for being such a fool. You and I often argued, so I fell for this daft cow. Semyon began to kiss his wife's hands. Will our love collapse because of this affair? Catherine gently took away her palms and shook her head. No, Semyon, we don't love each other anymore. It was just difficult for me to admit it to myself. It's always hard for people to admit their mistakes. You don't need me or your daughter. We'll be better off without you, too. Semyon jumped to his feet and looked at Catherine with anger. Here it is, this child again. It's all because of her. It was too early for you to become a mother. We weren't even satisfied with our relationship. I suggested you have an abortion. You should have sent this girl to an orphanage. Catherine recoiled from the man as if he had given her a sharp slap. Her face was aflame. Her eyes widened in shock. Don't you dare talk about my daughter like that, the girl hissed. You know what? Take this child and get out. Let's see how long you can last without me before you crawl back and ask for forgiveness, Semyon shouted back. For the first time, Catherine unconditionally obeyed her husband. She packed her stuff, took little Annie, and left wherever she looked. That was how the girl remained in a foreign city, without friends, without family, and with a child in her arms. At first, the fortune smiled on Catherine. The girl did not have time to fall into despair when the chance came up to both work and have a roof over her head. She came to a hotel that needed artists to paint the walls from the inside. They allowed her to live in one of the rooms and work in her free time. Catherine worked hard. She was painting the walls, designing postcards, or playing with her little daughter. Then, she divorced Semyon, but never returned to her hometown. Catherine couldn't return to her mother and listen to her endless reproaches. And I told you so. She imagined too vividly how her mother would poke her face into her impatience like a kitten in a puddle it had made. Over the phone, her mother spoke clearly. It's your fault that you couldn't keep the man interested. Oh look, she is a proud woman. Pride is a vice, by the way. You had to grit your teeth and be patient. He would apologize and become obedient. But you're a fool, Catherine. Catherine thought she wasn't the fool among the two of them. Even though it was hard for her, she was not left alone. She had Annie, for whom she was responsible. After the white streak, a dark streak came into the lives of Catherine and Annie. Catherine fell from the working platform while painting on the wall and broke her arm. Unfortunately, she couldn't continue her work any further. Catherine had to exchange life in a hotel for a room in a hostel. It was hard there, but the girl, laughing, said to her daughter, "Well, it's better with cockroaches than with our deadbeat dad. Ahem. The main thing is that you and I are together. Mom's hand will heal, and we'll get better," she promised Annie. But Catherine fell ill, followed by Annie. One illness gave way to another. Catherine spent all her money on medicines, rent, and the kid. She had to pay for kindergarten, good clothes, and toys. After all, she wanted so much for Annie to have the best. When Annie turned 5 years old, Catherine encountered new difficulties. She had barely gotten a job as a secretary when Semyon appeared in her life again. He managed to find out where his ex-wife lived. Then he got her fired from her job by spreading dirty rumors. Catherine could not believe she had not noticed how vile her ex-husband was. "There's no place for you and me in the same city, Catherine," he stated when he met his ex-wife near the hostel. "So get out of here." Catherine didn't even move a muscle. "Do you think you're a cowboy from westerns? Sorry, honey, but you have too little masculinity for this role. You are pathetic for threatening a woman and a child." However, Catherine still moved. She wasn't running from Semyon, but looking for work. She no longer dreamed of being a designer or creating her own brand. The girl just wanted to feed her daughter. Therefore, Catherine got a night shift job at a factory, where they promised to pay well. But those were only promises. The salaries were always late. The woman's health was getting worse due to the harmful work. She often missed shifts, either because her daughter caught chickenpox or because she was feeling bad. The bosses were unhappy with such an employee and cut her already meager salary. Catherine got an additional job. She started cleaning entrances. Sometimes, when the money was tight, Catherine took expired milk from stores and made pancakes for her daughter. There were periods when they ate those pancakes for weeks, and the girl began to whine because she could not even look at them. Then Catherine cooked soup with potatoes and carrots, making dumplings from flour. Mom always tried to give more food to her growing daughter. Annie noticed that and nodded at her mother's plate, which was almost empty. "Mommy, why don't you ever eat anything?" the child asked, looking naively at her mother. "Are you on a diet?" Catherine smiled sadly. She leaned forward to stroke her baby's blonde hair, which was the same as her own. "Something like that, honey. Tell me, do you want more?" Annie pursed her lips and looked away. She always hid her eyes from her mother if she wanted to lie. "No, mommy, I'm full." Catherine laughed and shook her head. She took the remains of food from her plate and poured the portion into the child's plate. "Come on, eat. Otherwise, you will remain small," her mom demanded in a deliberately cheerful tone. She looked at her daughter, resting her cheek on her fist. The girl happily ate her lunch. Catherine knew she was doing wrong. She remembered the thing with the oxygen mask. You had to put it on yourself first and then on your child. If the woman fainted from hunger, it would not help Annie. She knew that, but she couldn't act as her brain told her. Catherine couldn't allow her child to be malnourished. When Annie went to first grade, Catherine relaxed a little bit. They promised that primary school students would eat free of charge. When Catherine solved one problem, another appeared. She was laid off and fired from her job. The girl had to look for a new place. She began taking on more entrances, where she washed floors once a week for a meager salary. When Catherine saw a vacancy for a cleaner in a restaurant, she quickly agreed to this job. One fine day, Catherine was returning home and went into the store. She received her first salary at a restaurant and decided to please her daughter with some treats. At the store, the woman saw a stand with beautiful postcards. There was a time when she hoped to draw entire collections, and her mind was full of inspiration and ideas. She was standing in line when she looked at her hands. The girl's eyes filled with tears. Those were no longer the thin and graceful fingers of an artist or designer. Her hands turned red from water, bleach, and detergents. Even rubber gloves did not help. Of course, cleaning floors was not the limit of her dreams. However, Catherine no longer remembered those days when she dreamed of creating something beautiful. The right arm, which she broke, sometimes did not obey and hurt. The bones had fused incorrectly, possibly due to a doctor's mistake, but Catherine had neither the strength nor the money to treat the fracture again. For the first time in the years of her hard life, Catherine felt sorry for herself. She felt offended. Did she deserve that? The fate of a woman who washed floors and a single mother who lived with her child in an old rented apartment with mold on the walls. Catherine acutely felt how tired she was of her life. It seemed to her she was drowning in quicksand, suffocating, and saw no light, no way out, and no chance to take a saving breath. When Catherine returned home, her mood did not lift. She took a shower and scrubbed herself long with a washcloth, as if wanting to erase the smell of a floor cleaning product. It seemed to her it had ingrained itself into her skin. The girl wiped off the fogged mirror in the bathroom with a wet palm and looked at her reflection with a long, appraising gaze. Catherine was still young, but she saw an old lady looking at her from the mirror. As if for the first time, Catherine noticed the bruises under her eyes, her pallor, and her excessive thinness. What happened to that stunning blonde, whose blue eyes were shining with a mischievous sparkle, and whose plump lips were always smiling? Catherine winced, turning away from her reflection with disgust. She wrapped herself tighter in the bath towel and left the bathroom. After changing clothes, the woman entered the room she shared with her child. Annie was away, but her school dress was lying around. The woman sighed, thinking it was time to teach her messy daughter to care for herself. She lifted the dress, but immediately froze when she noticed strange stains. Mom unrolled the skirt to take a closer look at the stained hem. The light pockets soaked with fat had dirty stains crawling down and dripping onto the skirt. Catherine couldn't even imagine what her daughter had done to stain that expensive dress so hard. After all, they had to order it to comply with the school dress code, and the price was much higher than they could afford. And now it's ruined. Although Catherine was familiar with many cleaning products, she had no idea how to remove that fat. "Annie!" the woman screamed, unable to control the emotions that had been accumulating in her all day. No, all those years. "Annie, come here immediately!" The girl who was in the kitchen rushed into the room and looked at her mother in fear. "Mommy, what happened?" Annie asked, batting her eyelashes. Catherine's nostrils fluttered as she sucked in a breath. The woman shook the stained dress in the air. "My daughter is a slob, that's what happened," she screamed. "Annie, how could you? Do you even understand how hard I work? I clean up after other people. I clean up the marks from ketchup, beer, and their shoes. And you? Do you know how long I worked to buy you this dress? I don't have the money to buy new things over and over. These stains, where are they from? How did you manage to get so dirty? What if they don't wash off? Are you going to go to school like a dirty little brat? Do you want to disgrace both of us? That's what you want. That's not a dress anymore, but an expensive doormat, Annie." Catherine threw the dress on the floor at the feet of her daughter, frozen in shock. Annie, who was not used to her mother yelling at her, could not stand it and cried bitterly. But Catherine could not stop, as if Pandora's box had opened inside her, allowing the accumulated stress to break free. "I didn't want to, Mom," the little girl sobbed, wiping her face with her fists. "Mom, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't think—" "That's right, you didn't think." Catherine clasped her hands. "Maybe you'll start thinking next time, at least about how hard it is for me to get money, Annie. Now stop whining. Go to the bathroom and wash yourself." Sobbing, Annie walked away from her mother. Her thin shoulders trembled, making Catherine's heart sink, but she turned away, pursing her lips. Of course, she decided she was too angry because of the dress. However, she could no longer go and apologize. But she will be more careful with clothes. Catherine tried to convince herself and calm down. Sighing heavily, Catherine walked past the bathroom into the kitchen. She decided to make amends to her daughter, not with words, but with deeds. So she was thinking about making her favorite mac and cheese. When Catherine opened the refrigerator, she frowned. Then she turned pale and took a step back. On the bottom shelf that her daughter could reach was a plate with a fatty cutlet. There was also her daughter's favorite pasta, all covered in butter and even with cheese. Nearby was a postcard, on which her baby drew two smiling people, taller and shorter, holding hands tightly, and signed, "To Mom." Catherine's heart sank as she realized what happened. More precisely, she combined the stains on her daughter's pockets and that plate of food. The woman closed the refrigerator with a trembling hand, swallowed a lump in her throat, and walked towards the bathroom. "Annie," she called her daughter in a trembling voice, knocking on the door. "Annie, can you come out?" The girl came out of the bathroom, looking at her mother warily. Catherine felt even more pain when she saw her baby looking from under her brows, scared as if she didn't know what to expect from her mother. The girl's eyes were red and swollen. Catherine squatted down to be on the same level with her daughter. "Annie." She took the girl by her hands, wet from the water. "I saw a plate in the refrigerator. What is that?" The girl hesitantly looked at her mother, frowning, but still answered, "We had a delicious lunch at school today. It was my favorite," the girl whispered, sniffing her reddened nose. "You always shared your portion with me, saying you're not hungry. I thought you still wanted to eat and hid my food in my pockets. I didn't know where else I could put it. Sorry, Mom." "Forgive me, my dear," Catherine muttered, her voice breaking with excitement. She clasped her daughter tightly to her chest and began to sob loudly. She kissed her baby's face, hugged her, and asked for forgiveness. Catherine realized any difficulties in life were worth it if her daughter truly loved her. Later, when Annie was asleep, Catherine was drinking tea and looking at the postcard her first grader had drawn. The woman turned her gaze to her crippled hand. She clenched and unclenched her fingers. She decided that being just a mom and staying afloat was not what she dreamed of. She wanted her daughter to be proud of her. She wanted to prove to herself and the world that she was worth something. No matter how hard life kicked her, she would survive. After all, Catherine was responsible for a little person with a large soul. Her daughter loved her despite everything. She believed in her and was ready to share the most delicious lunch with her. That night, Catherine took a pencil for the first time after a long break. She took it out of her daughter's pencil case. Since then, the woman wasn't just cleaning rooms. She began to create art. 3 years passed before Catherine got her brand, which she dreamed of. She and her daughter also got their apartment and car. As for the happiness, they always had it. And the first postcard Catherine created depicted a mother and daughter holding their hands tightly.